I'm going to talk about the 6 flights that got me there and how I got there, and hopefully share a bit of information along the way. 2 logos. I'm supported by the Sick and the Wrong for equipment and the BPRA for training. Jacob and Richard as well. We have to bang that drum whenever we can. I'll come on to that a bit later on. Hopefully it's going to change, or maybe not.
Great time.
Has it moved? Yeah. Right. So, what do you need if you want to be chasing the UK Cross Country League? You need to have a fundamental understanding of geometry. So back to school, make sure you've got your geometry and maths sorted. Triangles and declared loop flights. To win the UK League, you have to do multiple flights that are score over 250 points. And frankly, there aren't that many days in a year where you can get straight line flights that are going to score you that distance. All the people who've won it in the last 15 years have relied heavily on triangles. Until last year, or maybe the year before, UK triangles for me seemed always a bit out of reach, a bit too challenging. But over the last couple of years, I've got into them, and so now, once you've done a couple of big 100k or so triangles, then they don't seem quite so daunting. You just think, yeah, conditions suit that, so let's draw a big one and see what we can do with that. What you also need is need to be prepared to drive. You're going to have to cover a lot of the country. So these flights I'm going to talk about, we've got a couple. Well, interestingly, they're all in the north of the country. One of my friends was telling me that it's you have to go back to 2014 since the person who won the league, which is Mike Cav, did all his flights in the north of the country. And since he won, there's only been one other scoring flight in the north of the country for the person who won. So basically it's been southerners and all flights down south. So to make it all in the north of the country is quite unusual. But still, we've got a lot of ground to cover from here, going down to Derbyshire, going up to the Highlands of Scotland, which you'll see. And the scoring flights that won the league, they weren't the only flights I had. I had, 5 times as many non-scoring flights, and a good proportion of those were complete duds. And so I was down south a couple of times, so you do need a driving licence. You also need a good team around you as well. It's a team so you can fly as a gaggle, so that you can plan, organise and travel as a gaggle, so you're sharing everything, all the things that go with it. So that's a couple of things that you need, but what don't you need? What do you think? What's one thing you don't need? A job. A job. That is not what I haven't got there. That's a good point. Very good point. Any other suggestions?
Garlic.
Yeah. Well, that can feature in there sometimes, but probably not a lot. What you don't need is youth. Because, again, another of my friends pointed out that I'm the oldest ever winner of field games, which I thought was charming. Age is no barrier. We can continue. Just picking up that previous point about team flying, I'll show you the first of the videos I've got. Hopefully it'll play. This might be one of the technological glitches we've come across if there's not sound. So this is about gaggle flying and benefits.
Shake your head. Not roaring up. Thought I'd turn this way, just compare my altitude with Jake's. Slightly better over here. very similar actually. Not there between us. So nice sweeping turn to join Jake. Jake and Rich in 2.4 meters a second, about 4k east of Newton Moor.
So, gaggle flying, that's key. Jake Herbert, one of the key pilots in the Dales Club, probably more deserving than I to have won the UK XC League, to be perfectly honest. We fly extensively together, a group, and fly very cooperatively. So the point of showing that video was that cooperation. There's a guy climbing ahead, but as I approach it, I'm searching out to see if there's better elsewhere. So I turn the opposite way, because I'm going to cover a bigger search pattern, and then I join in, and then I join so as not to disrupt. That's one of the things we learned through the BPRA, the Race Academy. What's the three things? Observation, execution, I can't remember the third.
Discipline.
Discipline, that's it. So observation is absolutely key, is to be constantly observing what's going on around you and competing. So every time, I suppose some people embrace that and some people don't, the competitive side of it. But every time we fly in the Race Academy, in fact every time I fly, I try to outclimb everybody and anybody, just to improve all the time.
Whereabouts was that, Richard?
Sorry?
Whereabouts was it?
That particular clip was up in the Highlands, and I think that was a place called Newton Moor. I might have got my east and west mixed up, which I do a number of times. So it was for one of the flights actually, from a place called Craig Magee as it's abbreviated. So. All right, so about me. As I say, I've been flying paragliders for just shy of 30 years. Learned in this area, a member of the Pennine Club. I was membership secretary, I think, before Simon, or after Simon, I'm not sure.
No, I remember you being on the committee when I joined the club. Yeah.
Before that, I had a bash on hang gliders. Can you see that? I gave that up as too much, like I but anyway, I had a long time where I wasn't doing a great deal flying because of family and work commitments. But then, I think it was around about 2015, I got back into it and then been sort of building up since then. The last couple of years I've been in the top 10 of the cross-country league. Last year I managed to get, I had 3 big triangle flights, which gives you that confidence to then aim again for them going forward. And then for planning for this year, I did have it in my sights to give it a proper good go, because last year I had, I think it was 6 weeks away in May to June, in some competitions in Europe, but that took a big chunk of the year out, so I'd lost or missed some opportunities there. So I planned my year 2023, avoiding those trips abroad. Did actually take one, but it was only a week, so I didn't lose too much. So yeah, I was going for it, and I was sort of determined. Right, that's it. So this next slide is, these things were meant to come in at the side, but basically it's a plot of the different flights that I've done. But the scoring flights are all in this period between the 15th of May and the 16th of June. So that's the period when I did all my flights. 1 month. Yeah, just over a month. Yeah. And they were all, squashed up, 4 of them within just over a week. I'll just focus in on that period of time. Ignore that, I don't know where that piece of text came from. But on this chart, green is basically the scoring flight, so the 6 green blocks. This dashed is where I've done a declare. So if I had well, this one, I declared the flight and I achieved it, so the green is encased in the dash. Here, I planned this flight, didn't achieve the plan, but I achieved this other flight, which I actually scored at the time, so my overall score, which is the black line, increased. But that basically became a discard further down the line. Declared flights are that people, there's very few people that love them, but I do love declared flights. But a lot of people get frustrated by them because they miss their declares for various reasons. And I must have a list as long as both arms of reasons why. Every one that you can think of, and some that have yet to be invented, I have failed declares because of those. But the beauty of them is, if you fly as a group and you fly to a particular goal, then you all get the same score for it. There's no, oh, I got that half a kilometre further. That's standard procedure, isn't it, to go to the next field and you just pitch. Whereas if you've got a declared goal, then you're all going to get the same points and you get the same train back. But they are undoubtedly difficult in terms of planning and then execution, which is why they get these multipliers, you know, because flying a triangle flight is more difficult than flying a straight line flight. I would definitely argue that the multipliers they have for these triangles and outward returns overstate their difficulty, because that's self-evident by the fact that there are the league results are dominated by triangle flights, because people put the time in, and you can get a 300-point triangle flight in 4.5, 5 hours. To get a 300-point open distance flight, you would be doing a lot more than that. It's a lot more difficult and there's fewer days. Anyway, where were we? So, dash line means it's a planned flight. Grey means it's achieved, but it's not scoring flight, and the green is it's scored. So there's 6. I presume everybody knows that. The UK Cross Country League is your best 6 scores of the year. So that's how they contributed for me. 15th of May to the 16th of June. Right.
Flight planning for Monday the 15th of May. This is at 11 o'clock on Sunday the 14th of May. Start by stepping through the RASP stars rating for the whole country to see where the best stars are. This is the stars rather than foot launch adjusted. And there's a lot of red there, so that's looking pretty good. Although it gets mottled by mid-afternoon, which looks to me like showers are bubbling up. Okay, let's go back to 9 o'clock and look at the boundary layer average. So it's pretty strong, northerly or northeasterly, so there's some distance to be had. It's easing as you go through the day. Cool. So I'm immediately thinking, with that wind flow, Model Ridge or perhaps even Tinto in the Scottish Lowlands. Right, let's go back and zoom in and figure out why it's gone speckled, which I think is likely to be showers. So this is at 3, we've got these mottled bits and something's going on. So is it rain? Yes, it is rain. When does this start? Right, so at 12, got rain, band of rain from Hull going south. That's still there. So that would be a problem with a downwinder from Model Ridge. The thing is, there's tons of showers. Well, there's some showers on the coastline going from Tinto.
I think, yeah, whatever. Showers will just steer around it. What I should have pointed out on there, I live in Hebden Bridge, which is midway between Leeds and Manchester, so it's great because it's slap bang under Manchester airspace. It's not great for going cross country, although Mr. Cleverly has this plan that you're going to fly from Pendle underneath that gap and continue for 300 odd K. I think that's an element of difficulty which is just unnecessary. Anyway, that limits the places that I aim to fly, but I've got a fairly wide purview, so my sort of rules that I loosely stick to is 2 hour each way driving, 100 miles, but I stretch it for the Lake District because I'd go there even if it was raining and I wasn't flying. So North Yorkshire Moors is within my one day's trip horizon. So in terms of that forecast, northwest to north, blowing out south of the M62, good air mass all over the place, showers to be wary of. So the choices, the places I had in mind, Model Ridge and Tinto, as is usual. Social media is pinging away, days in advance, then the evening before, who's out tomorrow, where should we go, and decide to, so I've shown that the main planning tool I use is RASP, but I then validate it with other things, because RASP does have its flaws. I don't know, anyone think of a couple of flaws that RASP might have? Sort of systemic flaws?
It's like the old data.
That was one I was thinking of, but it refreshes at intervals, doesn't it? So you can get caught by it, but it's refreshing for sure.
It doesn't get cloud amounts right, does it? From fronts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's good on cumulus, cloud that develops during the day,
Yeah.
but any sort of top cover or frontal cloud,
Yeah.
it often gets it wrong.
That's exactly what I'm going to come on to and show why I checked that. But it's based on the GFS model, as opposed to which works at various resolutions, but one of the other sources of data, the UK Met Office, works at a final resolution. I think importantly as well, the RASP star rating, that is just a combination of lots of different factors which should be good for soaring. A key thing it doesn't take into account, as far as I'm aware, is ground height. So you can get a 5-star day, this cloud base is anywhere from 4 grand upwards. 4 grand in the Highlands of Scotland is a macro view, so it's like 100 feet above Barley, that's the equivalent. So you've got to be wary of that. But to validate the forecast, I look at the Met Office through Windy and choosing the UKV model, particularly to look at cloud, because RASP doesn't get that right very well. It's also a good check of the wind speed, and I look at surface and wind at 2,000 feet. Surface, is it safe to launch? 2,000 feet, is it howling gale? But I'll tolerate stronger wind at launch, particularly with the aim here is thinking of the North Yorkshire Moors. You've got some high ground to go over, but once you get in the Vale of York, it's basically pan flat at sea level for hundreds of kilometres. So you're not really worried too much about large-scale turbulence risk. So you can tolerate a bit more wind from there. That's another thing to be aware of in understanding the forecasts and the particular sites that you go for. So I'm not sure, are people familiar with Model Ridge as a place? So it's the north side of the North Yorkshire Moors, and you've basically got flatlands in front from the sea, and it's only maybe 15-20 kilometres to the sea in a north-northwesterly wind. So you've got basically some air coming over the sea, a limited amount of time travelling over the ground, then it hits the hills and it's going to start bubbling off. And you can often find a situation where the forecast for Model Ridge isn't particularly great, and it's right actually, because the cloud base isn't desperately high there, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. You can get up and you can get off and away from there, and you just stick with it until you get out into the North Yorkshire Moors, and you suddenly get an extra 1,000 feet of ground clearance for nothing really, simply because the terrain's lower and the sky improves because of it. What else? Oh, you're also looking at rain, checking the UKV forecast for that. Step through it, going it by hours of the day, just to see how it develops. And then in terms of route planning, I use this site called XC Para, which again, it's another RASP representation, but it does it on a more detailed, granular, a map that scales better actually, the underlying map. And then it has these planning tools. And so what I will do is step through hour by hour and draw the route, basically following downwind. You can also get airspace on the XC Para representation, so if you've got to go around airspace, you can factor that into your planning as well. As you can see, I'm going through hour by hour, and then the length of these arrows is basically, you know, estimated speed over course, and I'm a man who loves a spreadsheet. So I've done some calculations, and your speed over the course is obviously dictated by two things really. If you're going downwind, that is, the wind speed and the strength of the climbs. Stronger the climbs, you're going to go faster, you can push on faster. Anyway, with an average of 2 meters a second climbs and 20-25 kilometers an hour, they expect you to make 46 kilometers an hour. So these arrows, which are in hourly chunks, are around about 46-45 kilometers. Also, around about 45 kilometers an hour is your optimum speed to glide at that climb rate and in that speed. Yeah, I think that's about what I've got to say on that. Right, so I'm going to set off from Model Ridge, but to where? So I think most of my cross countries are basically tours of mainline railway stations. So again, somewhere on that direction, in that route. So the choice of railway stations, so we've got Newark, Grantham and Peterborough. Newark is 150 kilometres with a declaration 187 points. Grantham 170 would give us 212 points if declared, and Peterborough 215 kilometres would be nearly 270 points. So should, you know, Peterborough, that'd be grand getting that. But it's early in the season, and so just getting a score that's over 200 points in the bag is an absolute primary objective. So I went for the middle of the three, aiming for Grantham. Yeah, aiming for Grantham. And then once we've chosen Grantham as the destination, using Google Maps, look where the station is, and we're coming in from the north, all that's built up area, don't be coming in on some sketchy final glide over some housing estate. So I'm going to come in on that open field there, zoom in at detail to see, you know, you can see, sometimes you'll see discrepancies between the satellite picture and street maps. You might see some housing development that's popped up. You can also see power lines as well. So I'll choose a landing field where I'm not gliding in over power lines, or if there's some obstacles, then I'll take a note and make sure that information is shared with the people that I'm flying with. Right, so then use FlyXC, another app, everyone familiar with, I presume. You know, just draw your line from where you want to start, where you end, and you get a code, QR code to scan into your gadget of choice, and away you go. Right, so
Richard, so would you only use 2 waypoints, start and finish?
yeah, for a flight to go, because all the waypoints are 400 metre radius, so if you add an intermediate one, then it really limits your options. I've previously used intermediate waypoints for navigation, but there I want them to be much wider.
What do you do to avoid airspace and things like that?
Fortunately, as we will see here, actually I thought there was a thing, you'll see that Doncaster airspace no longer appears on this. So up until, when was it, March, end of March this year, there was a block on there. You wouldn't have been able to get through, you'd have had to stay around it, which would have been a pain in the backside. And there was a second MATS there as well. That's Scampton restricted zone, and then it's embedded and surrounded by, or there were 2 ATZs and MATSs, but it's cleared out much better now. But yeah, for flight to go, it's just start and end.
Right, thanks.
So I think there'll be a video now of this flight.
11:14, we're at 3,285 feet. Set off from Model Ridge. We've been maybe flying Oh no, 25 minutes now. We've got a goal set at Grantham, and it's a brisk day, so let's hope we get there. We've got Jake and Chris are maybe a kilometre to the south of us. Got Ali G on his 777 King beneath, and there's a Niviuk, presume that's an Arctic there, don't know who it is. This is a nice climb though, been averaging 1.5, 2 metres a second. 11:20, 3,996 feet. How far have we got to go? 165 kilometres, so we've done about 4.8. Wind speed is showing 19 kilometres an hour, 329 degrees, which is good. And we're heading out over the North Yorkshire moors. Key is to get out of here and into the Vale of York. Got a bit of a climb just behind you, Chris, 1.5 at the moment. Uh, 11:40, 149 to go. So we've done 20 kilometres. Not bad actually, not bad speed. Gonna head a little bit west, so I'm not disconnected from the others. Three meters.
So that was crossing the moors. You'll have to excuse me. This is a presentation of porn, just paragliding porn, clouds, or wall-to-wall clouds.
Well, I was wondering if that was actually you crossing the moors and you're in cloud.
No, because that flight would be chopped if it was cloud flight. So you get to the edge of the moors, you popped out, and feeling pretty good at that point. Well, yeah, we've done 25 kilometres, 42 kilometres an hour at 4,000 feet above ground level now, so things are looking fine. However, the next section, this is the altitude trace. This is coming over the North Yorkshire moors. There isn't even any terrain there to be worried about. But I've got a long section of basically grubbing around 1,700 feet. Anybody have a clue as to why that might be when this is the sky that I was looking at?
Well, you then go into the Highlands, yeah.
Exactly.
Air, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly that. The wind comes over and it just starts to drop down, and that just suppresses all the thermal activity. It doesn't stop it completely, just suppresses it. They're more difficult to come across, and they're just kept low. So I don't know whether this is meant to be a video or not, to be honest. We may be coming up to a break point, because the next slide does look like another complete cloud whiteout. But what it was meant to be was a picture of where I was. So I've got a series of these, and I think none of them are going to work, but I'm pretty sure.
That's not VFR.
That is not VFR. I don't know what those X's mean now.
You're the pilots in the cloud.
It's flamed. I'm hoping this will be a transient issue, and it will start. No, this is
This is the best one.
This is the best one, but it's a picture of the guys that I flew with, but it's not going to display the picture. These pictures aren't displaying, unfortunately. So these were...
CIA warnings.
Yeah. Alright, so bing, this was a success. It achieved the declare. I think, yeah, there was what the previous slide said. There was, or this one says actually, 5 of us made this 170 kilometre goal, 212 points, 11 till 4. The gate, one of the pictures that it didn't actually display was the view of the sky when we got to Grantham. It looked absolutely mega looking downwind. Yeah, the next slide isn't covering that. So I definitely think that perhaps the goal didn't make the most out of the day, because finishing at 4 you would easily expect to be flying till 5, half past. Whether the wind's 20 to 25 kilometres an hour, maybe top end, but not, certainly wasn't challenging. Never felt there was any problem. When I came into land, still had some ground speed there. I think the maximum wind speed must have been about 45 kilometres an hour, because my instrument didn't realise this at the time, but after the fact, when I was doing a replay, it showed more than 100 kilometres an hour ground speed. So, and if it coincided with when I was pushing full bar, I mean, I don't tend to push full bar that much on UK cross-country flights.
What wing were you on, Richard?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier. I've done all these flights on a Xeno 2, and in the UK I fly a lightweight Woody Valley GTO light harness. I do have other race harness, but basically if I'm carrying up the hill, I'm going light. If I'm getting up in a bus, I'll take the heavyweight stuff. That's the bottom line. The showers that were forecast, you could see some in the distance, but we never encountered any showers on coastline that we had to worry about. So that's one of the things we picked up earlier in the season, that the GFS and model was over forecasting for showers, so it's just taking that with a pinch of salt. So I should have said at the outset, very happy to take any questions as we go along. I'm going to move on to the next flight, unless anyone's got any questions about this one.
Just a quick one. You mentioned the grey ones are non-scored. Why is that the case?
Well, it scored at the time because this is my overall score.
Yeah.
So I haven't actually got what the total was, but when that grey one, when I achieved that flight, it scored at the time, but it wasn't one of my 6 overall highest scores. I think my highest score was 300 points, and the lowest was 212.
It's not the top 6, basically.
Yeah, so it's basically the top 6. You were saying about camera and the microphone. This year I got Insta360 1X2.
Its own microphone.
Well, it has the ability to plug in an external microphone, which makes the absolute revelation in terms of videos.
If you'd binned off your declare and carried on to Peterborough, what would you have scored?
Oh, I did have that. Then was it 212? So it was pretty much the same. The actual distance to Peterborough would have been the same. However, I would have carried on, but I was desperate for the loop. Because when I got to Grantham, there was just a fantastic looking cloud street. I didn't land at the goal, the other guys did. I carried on, I thought, I'm going to go. But then I got the other side of Grantham, and I thought, I'm really desperate. I'm not going to be able to make it for that next leg.
Do you not use a P-tube then?
I do. Enough said, yeah.
Rain showers.
Okay, my next scoring flight was the 26th of May. And this was a training camp for the British Paragliding Racing Academy. The Racing Academy been going, I don't know, maybe 8 years,
Still said 10.
10 years, something like that. Purpose is to develop British pilots in competitions, ultimately to achieve the very highest level, to be world champions. And they were successful 2 years ago when Russell Ogden was the individual world champion and the UK were world champion team. Obviously, not all of the people in the race academies are current world champions. I was quite surprised that they were prepared to take an old timer like me. But you know, each to their own. Everyone's got things that they can bring to the game. If you're really dedicated to push on and get to that highest level and compete at the highest level, then the race academy is a fantastic place to be part of. You know, we get on these training camps. So this was in the UK, obviously because it's part of the Ukraine Cross Country League. In a training camp, this one was focused on race training. So they're helping us develop our cross-country flying skills, but then improving those, you know, to maximum efficiency. So Guy Anderson, who was leading this training camp, is probably one of the top 5 thermal pilots in the UK. You know, extremely rare to outclimb Guy. He's just absolutely immense. So the opportunity to fly with him and to get feedback and develop is a great opportunity. So I was helping Guy decide where to hold it, and ultimately we decided to go for Derbyshire because it looked light winds and decent rasp. That was we rendezvoused at the Derbyshire Lights Gliding Club at Camper, is it? Which is on Bradwell Edge. Had a nice breakfast there, really hospitable. And that's Guy on the right, and Richard Carter, another legend, current and many times UK Open distance record holder and league winner. And this is Richard Carter's home territory, so having him, his knowledge available was fantastic. And you know, we were there to go big, and you know, Richard Carter doesn't get out of bed for anything less than 100-kilometre triangles, so that's what we came up with. This is the forecast, so that is roughly the area where we were based and where we're aiming. What we can see is there was an area of the stars were degrading, which basically cloud was coming in, and we need to get off away from that cloud, complete our flight, and then towards the end of the day you can see that the stars were improving back, so there was an area, a way of coming back in from the north. So that's going to be our final leg, so working our triangle up from that. That's what we're aiming for. This is just illustrating why the stars were breaking down. Basically solar radiation is getting blocked off because there's clouds building, and then it starts to break up, and which just correlates with the star rating towards the back end of the day. Boundary layer average wind, you know, fairly light. That's eminently in the achievable range for circuit flights. Ideally, I aim for less than 10 kilometres an hour boundary layer average for doing circuit flights. However, you can do them in more than that. We had one which we'll come on to later actually, which was the wind was stronger than forecast, and we still managed to achieve a circuit flight. So, you know, you live and learn, don't you? You can push these boundaries a little bit further. Right, so we ended up on Rush Up, and whereas normally I was following on the previous flight, this is me here, hidden behind this in this submarine harness, and this is my Zeno. I got this submarine harness for racing because it does supposedly give a significant advantage. They reckon 5% advantage at full speed. I thought that's not very much, is it really? But then I was chatting to a friend through the results I had in a competition in Colombia, and I was like between a minute and a half and 3 minutes behind the leaders, and he was saying, well, 5% full glide, you know, you've lost, I think he said 200 metres of gliding at full glide. 200 metres, 2 metres a second, you've lost 100 seconds there. So you would be within the minute of the leaders just by, on a performance advantage and equipment advantage. Anyway, so I bought into the dream, or nightmare as it is more appropriately called. Ended up in this thing, and it is a proper nightmare. However, it wasn't just me though. There's other people there. If this isn't you, Mr. Butterworth, who is it?
That's me.
Because that's your jacket, that's your helmet, it's your submarine.
That's me.
That's Jacob's submarine.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
I don't remember being.
Another fashion victim.
That's a different day. That's Bradwell.
It isn't. Guy isn't.
That's the day after in Bradwell. I didn't come down for the Friday.
Ah, you're right. Actually, it's not really Russia, is it?
No.
I don't know. Oh, well, same. You know. What is this? Ah, right. So I don't have any video footage of this. So this is a lot of this Sports Track Live replay. I won't go through it all. This was me in the bloody submarine. Somebody was watching from the ground, and after I'd landed, he said, your submarine looked terrible. So instead of a 5% performance advantage, I got like 10% disadvantage. It probably worked in my favour, actually. So we're up and off, managed to, a guy on this launches just floats up in an elevator, and the rest of us scratching around, trying to get up. Eventually we get together. Flying as a gaggle. Ultimately, in a couple of minutes' time, you'll see that I get separated from them. It'll just be a few seconds. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Let's see if I can move it on to a particular place. I don't think you can. Right, so that was my mistake. I went back to get this climb that those guys got. Yeah, there was a climb there, but now I'm separated. So that was before the first turn point. And basically I'm flying on my own after that point in time. Yes, I was chasing them, and I would kind of catch up to the same place above the ground, but like 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet beneath, so you're never actually in the same cycle. I think ultimately though, that played to my advantage, because if you think back to the forecast earlier, there was a problem that basically it was sun shining out over Sheffield and the flats there, and it was clouded in over the peaks, and we did definitely discuss that, but I was behind and a bit slower, and these other guys, when they're coming in, they get shaded out and didn't manage to make it back, whereas me coming in a little bit later, there's me, Richie and Indy have landed and cruising over about 100 metres to the left of them, or something like that. All this last leg coming back in, I'm thinking it's super shady, there's virtually no sun on the ground. I'm just thinking, I'm not going to make it, but I'll get back as far as I can, minimise the walk, etc, etc. So that's the goal that I'm aiming for. Guys down here, so I think I only have 12k to go. Not expecting to get there, then get a little sustainer. So I'm trying to get over here, so that's cool. I'll do that. Then it releases, goes from just maintaining up to like 1 metre a second, and I think gets about 3,000 feet, 3-1, and then push on onto the end of that ridge, Lowe's Hill, and then track along the spine and come in. I think it was about 6 o'clock. When I landed, I thought, first of all, I'd expecting people to be there, because usually they'd wait around. I thought, oh God, they must have been in hours before, bugging off to the pub. So I messaged and said, oh, I've just turned up. And then found out that I'd actually passed them, and I was super surprised to make that flight. And that's the the result of it. So that was a success. That was a declared flight that was made, and 100 kilometres declared, 300 points. Took me up to 1,081 points total. What's that? 6.5 hours. Weather was pretty accurately forecast, particularly that cloud over the peaks and getting back.
Were you into wind initially on that first leg, or were you downwind?
It was initially south-southeast back into southeast, so yeah, we're into wind. And normally I would choose a first leg that was not fighting against the wind, because you know, first leg, the day hasn't got going as strong as it's going to be mid-afternoon. But it's a compromise, isn't it? The route was dictated by the leg coming from the north back into the peaks.
Yeah.
So that's where the third leg had to be. What isn't shown is actually there's a north of Russia, there's airspace, so you can't go there. You can't get 100k triangle fitted in, so you have to go out. But you saw that cloud coming in, so it closed down the peaks. You needed to push out over Sheffield, up north, and then come back in. So it was dictated by the weather. So that was Friday the 26th of May, and we were meant to be staying down there for a few days, but where next? The forecast, the RASP forecast, tempted us elsewhere. So light winds in the Highlands, lots of 5 stars in the Highlands, and pretty dreadful down in the rest of the UK. So the wheels on the bus, which is no small undertaking in my bus, it has to be said. Up we went to the Scottish Highlands. Let's have a look at the options and the sites and the forecast. So XC Power is particularly good if you're going somewhere that you're not familiar with the sites, because it has a lot of sites already plotted on there showing the wind directions that they take. I've been going there for 4 years, 2018, 21, 22 and this year. And roughly in the same time, between April and June, there will regularly be a week to 10 days of fantastic weather up in the Highlands, light winds, good triangle days, and dreadful in the rest of the country. So you're either staying at home in the rain, or you get on your bike or in the bus and you go up north.
Do you use your motorhome then for these trips?
I do if it's, you know, I'm going to be away a few days.
So you can be totally flexible with where you go, basically?
Yeah. That's another thing that I've got, that flexibility. So I don't work, I don't have a partner, I've got wheels on the bus. Living the dream. In some respects. Right. 28th of May to the 1st of June. Oh yes, yeah. So last scoring flight was 26th of May. Went up north to the Highlands and no scoring. Oh, actually, this next one did actually notch it up a little bit, but it didn't. It flew every day, but I don't know where that ping came
Some big
from.
ambitions as well for Scotland by the looks of things.
Well, yeah, you go big or you go home, or you don't. Yeah, so we got up there. That was the 26th. Travelled on the 27th, then flew all of these days. I don't know why I didn't put the ones in, perhaps because they didn't notch it up. Flew every day, at least for a bit. And these are bloody good flights. I mean, one of these, the 1st of June, was a triangle flight from Whitecorries, Glencoe. It was absolutely awesome. I thought I was going to be down in the boonies, 15k walkout. Managed to eke my way out of there and get back. But can't talk about that because it's not one of these things flights.
Has the other guy made it or not?
Huh?
The other guy made it or not?
Everybody, I know some people did land, but not as in the extreme place that I was.
But didn't complete the.
Well, Dougie Swanson Lowe did. I was flying with, but like 4 others did. Well, they've been home now actually. there's maybe a dozen of us that set off trying to achieve that particular flight. Right, so this is, I can't remember which day we're talking about now. Must be like the 2nd of June. Oh yeah, there we go. So, I mean, there are loads of other sites, but the ones I'm going to talk about are these two, Morone and Craigmeggy, because these are the ones that are featured in the flights here. So just deciding which between those two, sorry, and there was a slightly better air mass in the Cairngorms, which is Morone's in Cairngorms. So focusing in on Morone and stepping through, you can see that's a pretty good forecast. Other than, as long as you're coming back at the right time when it improves. So that's the last leg, convergence, that's what I should have mentioned. This is a convergence. People look at the convergence forecast as well on RASP. Absolutely legendary, particularly the convergences up in that area of the Highlands, because it's a relatively narrow landmass and you've got the air coming in from both sides meeting. Around Craigmeggy it sort of moves east and west and north and south, but that is a super buoyant area, which is why there are a lot of good flights done there. So start where you need to finish. So last leg, gonna exploit that line of convergence. That'll be the second leg, and then that's the first leg. That's the triangle as it was drawn. I think it was an 80k that we were aiming for. Yeah, clockwise. So west-northwest, east-northeast, then coming back south-west, following that convergence into some big mountains. Right, yeah, so there's Braemar, then there's a road here that's not just shown on Google Maps, but that's a road, and then there is walking paths as well. But then you've got some proper big mountains. If you're going to land out there, you know, here you might have a couple of hours walk, that'd be reasonable. But here you could be upwards of 6 hours getting out from some of these places. So I prefer to avoid that. So instead of taking the tiger line straight from there, you know, point B to point C, I'll do a nice detour just to stay within easy glide of a reasonable walk out. I think the actual line I took was even more in safety-wise. Okay. Oh yeah, so this is the picture of the Morone Hill itself. Braemar village is just down here, and I'm not sure if they fly off all faces, but it was this face that we were flying off, which was the easterly face. But it is, you can see it's super rounded at the top, and it's super flat. You can be running for 300 metres before you're off the ground there. It is, and no, literally, that's what it was one of the days. So I'm going to show you a video of leg one. It didn't all go to plan, this flight.
So it is 14:33, we're at 5,700 feet above Morone, just about to tag the start cylinder. We've just done it now. Back over the mast to get a climb.
Didn't expect to be at this altitude. Yeah, so that was a bit of a shock. You know, having planned a triangle, expecting light winds to then be coming in low, facing these 3,500 feet mountains in 20 odd kilometres of wind, so I wasn't desperately happy at that. Particularly when you're facing, you know, this prospect here. Were pretty daunting outlook, to be perfectly honest. I did this same day. This was planned and executed with Dougie Swanson-Lowe, who's based in North Wales. I know a few of you will know him quite well. As I explained before, I planned for this second leg, you know, not to take a big detour, to keep within reasonable walking distance. Dougie, on the other hand, just goes like laser focus, straight over the terrain, cares not a jot if he's got days of workout. Yeah, different entirely. That's Dougie, also on a Zeno 2, and that's us as we're about to get the first turn point. Still a bit of snow on the ground in the middle of June. As you can see, it's good sky, lots of clouds. We just bagged turn point 1 there, and that's turn point 2 in the distance, 35 kilometres. Dougie goes straight there. I'm taking a massive detour around here. So this is on this massive detour. Just a bit of cloud porn here with this convergence popping up. So, where are we now? Yeah, so this is the Dee Valley, Braemar down in that bottom right hand corner. So I've really sort of kept to the south of the coastline. So go along a bit and then follow it under this, what is effectively a cloud street, but it's a line of convergence.
How do you keep out of the cloud when you're getting so close to the base?
Well, you're always aiming for a blue, but you've always got to have you know where your exit door is going to be, and you always have that in mind. And
can you big ear on a Zeno?
You can, but I don't. I don't touch big ears. After a few years back, on a completely different glider, big eared, avoided cloud, but then ended up with a knot, or 2 knots in either side, and it put me in a bit of a pickle. So I never do. There's various other techniques you can use. One you won't hear many people talking about, and it applies particularly to high aspect 2-liners, is I won't call them wing overs, wing unders, full speed wing unders. So you accelerate fully and then you roll to 90 degrees either side. Each time you roll, it points the nose down a bit. So full speed, you're going down about -2.5. With that extra, you're going down at around about -4.5, -5. So that's a good way of keeping course control. You're pushing super fast as well, and you're keeping out the clouds. So yeah, if you see me rocking like that, it's because I think I might be going in, or I'm trying to avoid going in the cloud. Yeah, so at this point I've got 10 kilometres to go to the turn point, which is just positioned at the Lech ski station. And this is probably the most exposed walkout risk that I am. Because it's 10 k's in all directions to a road. However, and this was the lowest point actually. Other than that, I've been fairly high, and even at that height, I can still glide out. I'll sort of half the walk I'd have to do, and it'd still be within my, 2-hour tolerance for a nice walk. Yeah, that's at the Lech Ski Centre. We're just literally about to bag turn point 2, and then turn around and face goal back at Morone, which is just over Braemar. And then, yeah, just about goal. Braemar is the village here. I'm going to land down here. I think we've got a little...
Sorry, Richard, can you just go back to the previous one, please?
That one?
That one. So, you were talking about convergence to bring you back into goal on the third leg.
Yeah.
What did it turn out like?
Yeah, this is convergence here. You can see it, can't you?
Yeah.
I haven't got a view directly up, but there's clouds here. It's all being encouraged to lift there. So it looks good. Yeah, the forecast was pretty accurate that day. A little clip coming into land, there's Dougie just came in before me.
Oh man, what a flight! I was scared.
When facing those big mountains.
Oh.
So Friday the 2nd of June, success. It was a declare that was made, 80 kilometres, another 235 points, put me at 1260, wind and the cloud base and convergence, all as forecast. 7,703 4 metres a second climbs. It's a pretty good day, isn't it? Does anyone need a break? Or do you want to?
Yeah, good time for a break.
Yeah.
Go get a drink.
Okay.
Yeah. Halfway through.
So that was Friday the 2nd. Saturday the 3rd of June. Let's have a look at the forecast there. Maroon. Oh yeah, back end of the day this is. Often look at the back end of the day to see where it's best, and you can see Maroon nowhere near as good as Meggie, so looks like we're back to Meggie. Again! Again! Let's have a look in a bit more detail. Pretty good air mass as we step through the day. Ooh, a bit close down there, looks like some cloud is building. So getting back might be tricky, but it's still got there's a good road here. I can't remember what it is, the A84 or something. It goes Craig Meggie up to Aviemore and beyond to wherever it is on the coast. It's quite a wide valley, and you've got height either side, and it's still working to the north of the valley there. This is light winds. Now, interestingly, Craig Meggie faces south, and this has got a northeasterly flow to it, which is not fantastic. It's basically coming over the back, but the theory was it's so light, then the thermals will dominate that. But as Francis was saying, mixing of airs and shear layers in winter, not to the same extent, but there was turbulence on launch there. And, some people were taking collapses as we launched. But you pays your money, you take your choice. In terms of the forecast, so it was light northeast to the start, and then it's increased in northeasterly. So that's saying, right, push out to the northeast and then get blown back. Go out while it's light and come back with the strength of it. Still light around Meggie on the way back. So the task that we were thinking of was 110 out and return to Kinvici. And they changed the multiplier on the out and returns to 2.6. That would have given us 275 points, which would have been super tasty. And this is working backwards through the day now, showing was on the return leg, and on the outward leg, things are looking good. Where is Craig Meggie? Just in a bit more detail. So it's east-northeast of Fort William, and Aviemore is up to the northeast of it. So it's a bit of a trek getting there, but it's a fantastic place. I think were you there last year, Rich, when they set the out and return record from Craig Meggie? And it's simply because the air masses come in, you get all this convergence, and you just boat along for hundreds of miles that way and then come back hundreds of miles the other way. I digress. I think there might be. Oh, then you've got the walk up. Yeah, I mean, all of these hills in Scotland, you've got upwards of an hour's walk up. This is 376 metres of ascent, carrying, my pack is about 30 kilos, so it's a good old walk.
Why 30 kilos? Is it because of the submarine?
I don't carry the submarine, but that's what the lightweight arms. The sub adds another 6 kilos.
I carried my submarine up there this summer.
Yeah. It's
like 13 or 30.
30. I do scratch my head. I think, where does this weight come from? But honestly, you can't stand on the scales. I carry a lot of shit.
Are you taking any extra survival kit? Because it's Highlands.
Not there.
No.
India and stuff. But like 2 kilos of water, batteries, all the camera electronics.
Chocolate bar crazies.
Exactly. You need to nourish in flight. Yes, you need to be ready for a walk. Right, I think this is a video of the flight.
It's 13:10. We're at 5,669 feet. We've launched from Craig Meggy today, and we've got a 108 kilometre out and return programmed in. Just get these gloves on, get nice and tight.
Punching thin gloves and put me these thick ones on after.
There we go.
Richard noted on the flight from Morona, I was in shorts and light stuff. I was absolutely freezing, so taking no chances today in the winter gear and the mittens and things. It can be chilly, although today there's a lot more sunshine because we're in a slightly different air mass. This is the main valley with a road going down, so there's nowhere near the walkout exposure on this flight. You know, worst case scenario, you'd be like 5 k's to the road, but you'd be unlucky to land out that far. As you were saying, John, about not going in the clouds, you work your way to the edge and just push out through the wisp. There's always having an eye on an exit door. I was thinking putting this altitude trace on to see, you know, barely going below 5,000 feet, you know, all the way until you know, the back half of this flight. Unfortunately, I ran out of camera footage there. So yeah, it was, you know, compared to the previous day where I was in the big high cairngorms and scared witless, this was comfortable. I was always in easy glide of the road, not pretty high. But we did, and I'm not sure whether this, not really sure what this next slide is going to say actually. But we didn't make the declare because the clouds just ran out about 10 k's short of the next turn point, and behind us where we'd come from still looked fantastic, and we sort of chatted over the radio and decided it really wasn't worth the risk of trying to push out for that to get the turn point. We turned around, we turned around, got back to where we wanted to be, but continued further on, and then came back. It was, I'm not sure I've got the information. Anyway, they did push the boundaries a little bit, and it was really kind of sketchy coming back in. It took really close into the mountainside, hoping for some evening or late afternoon, just sort of gentle thermals to give me a buoyant glide in. Didn't find that, and I was only just managed to get the cylinder and whip it round and get it landed. So that flight, Sunday the 3rd, was a successful failure. We didn't make the declare, but did achieve the 104 out and return for 208 points. That became my 6th, you know, the lowest scoring flight for me. It took me to 1308. Wind. So that's what I was saying. We had wind over the back basically. So thermals are pulling it up, but the meteor wind was over the back, and it was a little bit turbulent. So if you're thinking of exploring this area, then you need to be capable and competent. you know, confident in your skills and what you're able to handle. Convergence was slightly short of the forecast. You know, it seemed to run out, or certainly there weren't the clouds there. You can still have convergence without the clouds, but if there's no clouds and either the air's a little bit, air mass is a bit different, a bit less humid, or it's not as strong. And because, you know, it looked so great behind us, we decided to sack it off. 4 metres a second climb, so another pretty good day. Which then, and I think we stayed at Craigmeggy for the 4th of June. Yeah, this is, oh sorry, I'm just looking at the back end of the day. I'm not going to go through all of it because, you know the procedure, go through it hour by hour, blah, blah, blah. This is just choosing where we're aiming for, and that's kind of Ken Gomes, Avimo and Maroon, and this is Craigmeggy. It's got a better air mass, so this seems like the place to be. That's the convergence forecast. What did we aim to do here? So we aim to do a 90k triangle, starting from Meggy, similar to where we went the day yesterday that we've just gone through, then down to the south and then back. And you can see we're never that far from the roads. I think there's about 10 k's, but you'd be pretty unlucky to face a 10k walkout. Yeah. Others, as I said, Dougie he wasn't actually here for this day, but he was just plotting his turn points as far as they could be in the boonies, like 20 k's of walk. Cares not a jot. That's not for me. Back to Meggy, 90k FAI. As you can see, keeping close to the roads. My phone didn't work yesterday. That's why we got music.
Bit of buoyancy.
Jules Robinson is a Scottish pilot, knows the hands like the back of his hand. A really good resource to hook up with. That's another of the benefits of being in the BPRA. You get to know these people from around the country. Yeah, so Jake and I have got this triangle in, and the other guys have got their own turns, so we're now pushing south. Pretty decent scenery out there.
The classical music works well as well.
Yeah. This is going to be easy. Nearly 7,000 feet on a... stuck here for half an hour. Yes, that was another successful that was planned and achieved. 90 kilometres, 270 points, up to 1408. Weather panned out pretty much as forecast. There wasn't any surprises there. I guess the climbs were a little bit weaker than we'd had over the previous few days. But that brought the Highlands road trip to an end, returned home after that. And I've just got one more flight to talk about. Any questions about the ones, particularly flights up in Scotland in the Highlands?
The wind looks very variable at different turn points there. Was that in the forecast?
Yes. Yeah. It is that factor, you know, that the air gets drawn in from both sides, and you can have a headwind going out and a headwind coming back. And how's that be? Well, it's the wind's changed. But if it's less than 10 kilometres an hour, then if you fly, just out when we had the break, I was saying, I talk about these, part of the things that sounds easy. The equipment that I fly allows me to fly these triangles, you know, flying a two-line EMD allows you to push into wind much better than, you know, lower class gliders. This next flight actually illustrates that, because Jake that I fly with, he flies a Xeno 2, well, he's had one since middle of last year, the same as me, but he got slightly unsettled earlier in the year, and he was flying a Photon up until the middle of the year, because he wanted to step back and just rebuild his confidence. And the lack of performance on the next flight, you know, really hampered him there.
Can I ask you about, you know Craig Mackey?
Yep.
I've flown it loads of times in the past. We always flew it in a southeast or maybe a south. What's quite interesting that you're flying it in the north. Was it in the north last year when they had the big record out and return as well?
I don't know, but we weren't soaring a north wind.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
We were just ignoring that meteor.
When we used to fly it, we did some fairly big flights, nothing quite as big as that. What always used to happen is later in the day, like for 4 or 5 o'clock, the sea air used to come up from the south.
From Fort William, yeah?
No, up the A9.
Right.
You used to get massive big winds coming up following the A9 and that big valley there.
Yeah, all right.
Because it comes up from sort of Edinburgh way and all that, doesn't it? Like, it always comes up to Cairngorms like that, doesn't it? And every time we flew it, you'd end up getting like shit conditions late in the day with all the air coming up from the south. But I'm guessing, I've never worked it out, if you fly it when the wind's coming over the back, that doesn't happen, does it?
So that was a rarity.
It's quite interesting.
That was a rarity, flying a southerly facing site with a northerly meteor wind.
Yeah.
And we were conscious, well, not really, how can you fly that? There's no soaring up the slope because the wind was coming over the back.
Yeah.
But it was so light, the thermals, you know, the thermals were so strong they were going to dominate.
But it's enough to keep off the massive big wind that comes up the A9, isn't it? which
I think that's a separate question of just explaining why we launched there. So we're confident we'll be able to launch there and then figure out. The point about the sea air coming up the A9, that's news to me. I honestly don't know how all those convergences form. I've flown up there, as I say, for 4 years, and around that area it's just always been mega convergence. Obviously I'm only going on the days where the forecast is good. How exactly, which bit of air meets from where, which direction, I don't know.
I'm guessing maybe they did it in the north when they set the record the previous year as well, maybe. Yeah, but we'd never flown, we flew it loads when we used to go to Scotland a lot, but we never flew it in the north. We just went when it was the southeast.
Yeah.
But obviously the southeast is encouraging all the sea air to come up from up the A9 way.
Yeah.
But flying in the north stops that, which we never worked that out.
But the A9 points at, it goes to Dalwhinnie and then branches to the northeast, doesn't it? And you've got some high ground that would stop it sort of flooding to Craigmeggy.
Well, no, it's pretty low, isn't it? All the way up the A9, like from like that bit, like it's flat, isn't it? South of the like north of Edinburgh and south of the Cairngorms, it's all pretty flat in that area.
Yeah.
And it all just rushes in. It's like all the south of the Cairngorms, every day. At the end of the day, you get a massive big load of. It's kind of sea air, kind of valley wind, isn't it? But basically, you get massive big influx of air from the south later in the day, and it all rushes up through, follows that valley where the A9 runs.
One of these flights here, we flew from Aviemore, whatever the launch place is up there, and we had a triangle, and we couldn't make the first turn point because it was just out into the, a considerably different air mass, and we just couldn't push out and drag that turn point.
Sorry, which one was that?
It was. I didn't talk about it because it was one of these non-scoring ones.
Oh, right.
But I was just saying we were pushing out into that air you were talking about, and struggled, and so just hightailed it back to the mountains where.
But flying it in the north, yeah, we never thought of that. So, did Jules work that out, or did you work that out? Or did you go out?
It was just. It was obviously wasn't ideal.
Yeah.
It was.
Well, no, it was though, because you wouldn't have done that flight if it was southeast. If the wind were on the hill, you wouldn't have done it. But I never realised.
Well, the
that.
previous day, that day where we did the out and return, not the declared one, the one that we sort of ended 10k short of the declared. Dougie did effectively that same flight, and that was in a southwest.
All right.
So it was achievable.
Right.
Yeah, so we basically repeated that same one. The reason we chose Meggie was it was just in the best air mass. Other places that were better for the wind direction, the air broke down earlier on, and maybe there wasn't going to be such a big opportunity.
Did you have to wait a long time on launch then? Did you have to wait for it to the thermals to get strong enough before it was launchable?
Did I say what time?
Didn't it?
Yeah, I think it was about 2:30. It can often be. It's rare to be launched in there before midday, and it can often be quite late.
And what was it like on launch? Was it very gusty? Was it?
Not very gusty. No, it was. It was really light, as I recall. And where I showed that walk up, the 376 metres, that's kind of its first shoulder, and people were walking even further up. To give themselves a better chance, but to be honest, there's no need if you're well high enough to get a climb at that stage. Okay, so any other questions before we move on? Final flight to talk about, coming back a bit nearer to home. Tuesday the 13th of June, evening, looking at the forecast for Friday the 16th of June. I'm looking at this day at this point in time. Considering a start at Rushup or Mantor. But that's not where I ended up. I was just there to say that Yeah, that going through the forecast is something that I pretty much do every day. Every day there's, you know, I'm looking a week ahead, see where the raspberry's looking good, and planning if it does turn out to be like that, this is what I might do. So I've got literally hundreds of prepared flights and to choose from. Oh, yeah. So I think this must be a little movie, isn't it? Don't need to talk about this. We've got the airspace, which basically separates us from, can't do it across an open distance. So focusing in on Courtly Spout to try and access this area of decent weather, decent stars. We're still doing. We settle on Courtly. Do you get that? Settle on Courtly. Yeah, so try and make the first leg as easy as it can be. You might say go up there, but then it's Eden Valley, so it's not going to be as good as staying on the high ground.
You're more or less going over Tail Bridge as well.
Yes, exactly. But one of the problems with that direction is we were going quite close to the Warcott danger zone. And Jake was saying, oh, what about Warcott? That's a bit close, as you can see. And we've got this wind that's blowing that way. And it is a problem, it will show on the video. But that's what we had planned. This would have been certainly a record for the Dales. The beauty of Courtly is it counts as the Dales and the Cumbria site, so we've had club records for two. It's like a Bruce the Bonus, 2 for the price of 1. I think, well, the largest FAI in Cumbria was the one that I did a couple of years back, 82. So anyway, no one had done 100. So we were just going big, go big out, go home. Some of us went home. Right, so the flight.
12:27, we're at 6,100 feet, and we're just about to enter the start cylinder for our 110k FAI from Courtly Spout. First leg is heading northeast over Kirby Stephen, keeping east of, there we are, started, keeping east of Warcott, and
so what was the direction on launch? Southeast?
Southeast, yeah. You see on some of these replays I've got the stats on the right hand side. It shows bottom right hand corner, shows the wind speed and direction. Stronger wind now, 11 kilometres an hour east southeast.
It's an exceptional day that. There's a lot of good flights in the lakes and day before the charity.
So yeah, that's a bugger. And you see how close I got, like within 100 metres.
it's a bit rock and roll, is this? Get up high, don't we? So 2 meters a second. 3 meters a second. Concentrate. This is 3.4. My ticket to get back in the game. Wow, 4.8, 5 metres a second. Right, time to push on, I reckon. $17.51, 5,000 feet, got 10 kilometres to get back to launch. I think that's Dean ahead, climbing.
Where do you need to push out to extend the triangle? Is that what you're doing?
Unfortunately not. The FAI is dictated by one of the other legs. I went that way and it became an out and return.
Another mega day of convergence, particularly at the south end of the Howgills. And then I landed at nearly 6:30, but getting down was, you know, I properly had to work at it, spiral diving down to get on the ground. It was still absolutely hooning up. So that was my last scoring flight. It was a successful failure, so I didn't make the declare, but it was a 105 flat triangle for 211, which took me to 1439 points, which was where I finished. Weather was just amazing. I don't think I can't recall having an 8,000 foot cloud base and 5 metre a second climb. That was definitely the strongest climb that I've ever encountered certainly in this last year in the UK, I should say. And that's it really. That was the 6th flight that did it for me back in England. 16th of June, as someone else was pointing out, it seems almost like a different season. It was so long ago, and there were just occasional days here and there. I did attempt other flights, but I didn't manage to achieve anything that exceeded these ones that I'd already done.
Did that go for the other guys like Dougie as well? All his flights in that slot?
It was for Dougie, and unfortunately his trip to the Highlands was marred by a couple of problems with declarations which sucked the enthusiasm from him. He got a bit disillusioned by it, but it's all the learning process. He had gadget problems because he got his gadget set up in hike and fly mode, and that buggered one of his declares up. Well, buggered two of his declares up. Any other questions? Any inspirations?
When you're flying, you're talking about a team. Do you divide up responsibilities for who's looking at weather and who's site and organising logistics, or do you just get together and?
Not
you just asked Richard. That's what I did for years. It worked a charm.
No, you don't really sort of divide stuff up like that. I guess I do a lot of planning because I've got more time or more inclination to do it than a lot of people. But my weather forecasting is a little bit simplistic. There are other people that will look at it and understand more detail of it. So there's people in the group that, you know, we'll get those terrifograms out and say, oh, look at that. Oh, what's that? Is it red or not?
You actually set the task on the hill then?
Mostly, we do it in advance, and often I will have a number of different options to choose from. If you're doing triangles, usually you've decided which way around you're going, and it's just how far you're pushing the corners out. So if you get to the hill and you don't get off as soon as you'd planned to, then you'll bring the corners in, you'll go for a smaller one, or the same applies for an open distance task if you don't get off as early. But you've always got to set your task before you leave the ground.
Yeah.
That's another classic failure in the declaration stakes. Any other questions?
Is there a plan for next year, Sarah?
Yeah, still. I'm going to do 3 weeks of competitions abroad that will impinge on the UK cross-country season, but majority of the time will be in the UK for the cross-country season. Do as well as I can. I think this year there were a number of the top guys, particularly from down south, who weren't as focused on it for various reasons, changing jobs, or Hughes launched that X-Contest UK, which only looks at your best 3 flyers. And so he's not been putting only his massive 300k flights is he put into the cross-country league. The rest he doesn't want to put in there.
Well done.
Thank you. Have you found that interesting or entertaining?
How strictly do you keep to the speed to fly you sort of talked about at the start?
So that was for planning purposes, and then I'm a simple guy, I like numbers, and so I race and I fly cross country, rule of 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3 between ground and cloud base. If I'm in the top third, I'm more likely to push faster. If I'm in the bottom third, I'm just in survival mode, and the middle, I'll moderate the 2. 1, 2, 3 also applies to strength of thermals. Very roughly speaking, speed to flight can be broken down. If it's 1 metre a second, don't use more than the first step of the bar. 2 metres a second, second step. 3 metres a second, full bar. Because what you learn through racing is he who gets to the thermal quickest will make fastest progress, rather than dawdling along, having a better glide, but he's already out climbing us, so, strong climbs. That is a very rough and ready approximation of speed to fly 1, 2, 3. And you also moderate that by the air that you're going through. So if you're going through some lifting air, you might decide to ease off a little bit and optimise. And then obviously if you're going through sink, you want to push more bar as much as you can get and pull the A's a bit to get some more speed.
If you're on full bar, how do you tell how strong the thermal is?
Well, it's all relative, isn't it? If you're full bar and you're in still air, you'll be going down at -2.5 a second. But presumably, you'll be pushing full bar because you're already in sync. If your vario starts to show less sync, if it gets to less than 2.5 metres, I'm thinking, this air is actually going up, I'll ease off and see whether it's worth
So you ease off when it starts to lift, basically.
I mean, other than if you go into a thermal, that's clear and obvious, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, I kind of veer towards this, and I'm not advocating it, by the way. This was the source of that video where I had a massive frontal in the lakes and cravat was spiralling round. Anyway, so somewhere I must have read or heard that full bar, you get into a thermal, you just stay in the bar until it eases off, then come off the bar, wang it round, and that's how the Sky Girls do it, Russ Ogden and on and on. Anyway, I was doing that in the lakes, into the thermal, and I started coming down, I had to stall it out. But fortunately I had like $4.5 to do it in.
And you know how to stall things out.
Yeah. I got in this spiral, auto rotation, but I looked up first thing, I thought, well, at least I'm not twisted. Second thing, it was actually a sat type of rotation because it was that big of a cravat. And I've done loads of spirals, and I know the G's that I can take, and I thought, this is nowhere near blackout territory for me. So I don't need to be worried I've got time to deal with this. Yeah. And there's a video and Malin describes what you should do, and there's like 120 mistakes that I made, including 20 ineffectual pumps to try and get this. There's no brakes there, why is it not working?
You didn't react within 0.1 second.
Correct. Yeah. You live and learn, don't you? I'd forgotten some cravats are just too big to spin out. I've done like maybe 400 stalls now, but I got to the point of thinking, this is just for show really. You never need one, but sometimes you do.
Have you ever planned a trip where you've driven hundreds of miles? You've looked at all the forecasts and everything, you get to your site, and it's total pants, and you barely do a top to bottom.
Well,
we'll see if you're mortal like the rest of us.
Yeah. When drove down, the North-South Cup got cancelled this year, but already set off and got down to, where is it? White Horse. And it did look breezy, but it didn't look. The thing is, down there, hills are so shallow and small, they can take a breeze. So I did drive all the way down there and only managed like 70k. But it was like plan to go to Norfolk, plan to get to 250.
No, that doesn't qualify.
That's not what Simon asked.
Not quite a top to bottom.
So how many of those flights do you think you would have done on a high-end B?
You could have done the downwinder on a high-end B, I think. You 100% couldn't have done that on a high-end B because Jake was on his photon and the wind was just so strong at the first turn point. He was just gliding at 1-to-1 to the deck. That was the Derbyshire 100k triangle, and the key to that was being slow. So a high B could probably have done that one, yeah, I reckon.
That was your highest scoring one as well, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Good question, yeah. Good question, actually. Yeah, but I mean, there's not many people attempt big circuit flights on lower rated wings because of the obvious performance disadvantage. But they're not impossible for sure. It's all about the wind speed, isn't it? If you've got less than
in 10 years' time, the high-end Bs will do that.
I would imagine so, yeah.
2 high-end Bs.
Yeah, we'll have some special coating on the line so there's less drag or something like that.
People have done massive triangles on Cs, haven't they? And I think at Malvern's people have done some massive, fairly big triangles on Bs.
Yeah, I think the largest, biggest scoring flight this year was a guy on a C wing. He did I think it was 310 points he got, which was an FAI from the Malverns, and he was on a C. Thomas Wycherley, from memory.
Where from? Sorry, Malvern.
From Malverns, yeah. Which is a fantastic place to fly. I would have really expected there to be a block of good Malverns weather, sort of July, August. That's what generally happens. Weather starts good in the north and then just gradually migrates south, doesn't it? There's no rocket science there. That's just.
There's a tow group down near there that dominates the league usually, isn't there?
Yeah, XC-Len, they launch in the Cotswolds as well. But I'm not sure they haven't featured quite as highly in the last couple of years because the weather's favoured the Malverns itself. And what I've learned from being part of the tow group out of Rutland is you can't gaggle fly as much from the tow. From Malverns, you can get 100 pilots off in the space of 5 minutes if you wanted to. It'd take you 2 hours having 6 winches running in parallel to get that number off from a tow field. And when you fly as a team in a a good cooperative gaggle, life is so much easier simply because you're sampling that much more of the air. So your chances of bumping into those invisible thermals is that much greater.
Richard Butterworth, you did a big flight on a tow.
From Rutland this year I did.
On a tow, from a tow?
From tow, yeah. Just over 200.
It was a record breaking
That was a
flight,
record
wasn't it?
for us, man.
Yeah. Well, it was a national record, national tow launch record, I think.
Yeah, it's it's the longest open distance flight from the tow launch.
It was actually my flight. I set the task and he flew it.
And so you were alone or with multiple people?
I caught up with Alex Colbeck and what's his name? Mick Roach at one point, and then I lost them again.
You overtook them?
Yeah. Well, I lost them over Leeds basically because we got different tasks. Alex had got a goal at Leeds, and we'd got a goal up on the northeast coast. So I lost them there and did the last bit of the
The record was broken 3 times in a day. Like, first Mick Roach landed, it was the record. Oh, and a few minutes later, like not a few minutes, an hour later, you landed.
It was a very windy day. I mean, my top speed was about 100k an hour ground speed at one point. And it was quite a late start. We didn't get off till coming up for 1 o'clock.
But you hear that, 100 kilometres an hour ground speed, you think, oh my god, it's an absolute nightmare. But it isn't.
If you're at 6,000 feet, it's a lot.
Jacob and I flew, we landed just short of 100k. We probably landed it when the wind was stronger, so it still was fine. You weren't going backwards.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah. Makes it easy, doesn't it? It's just like stepping off.
It's all right. That's fine in flatland, isn't it?
It is. You don't want to be doing that when there's some big terrain. No, that is for sure. Yeah.
It's pretty booming that day as well. We're getting like 3-4 metre a second climbs with 37k an hour in this. Ridiculous.
How many people are in the BPRA? As in non-like instructors / coaches?
I would guess 40, 30 to 40. And you've got the absolute cream, all the members of the British World team are in there, through to people who have just joined and are on Sea Wings, but they are aspiring to get to the top level and prepared to commit to it as well. Yeah, but I mean, flying with those people and making those relationships so that you can turn up at a far-flung bit of the country and tap into the local knowledge. Although I do find those little rascals,
a bit sneaky sometimes, aren't they?
Sometimes they'll share a task. You know, which radio frequency are we on? Yeah, okay. Hello. Is there or maybe it's just me. They just go radio silence.
How much is Zello taking off in that community?
I'm not aware of anybody that uses Zello. Not in the UK. I know it's used in the States.
It's massive. It's massive in Europe.
Right. No, we're old-fashioned. 2 metre radios. Yeah. Any other questions? Or shall we wrap it up there?
Right, excellent.
All right.
That's
Thank
absolutely
you.
fascinating. Thank you.